How frustrating could that game have been? Man United deserved something from that game, but without a proper goal scorer, we couldn't finish the chances, the multiple chances that we created in that game. The last-minute block, Maguire coming on. The fact that we've got Maguire coming on, by the way, is really indicative of the fact that we don't have anything else on the bench that Amorim can bring on to change the game. Nottingham Forest sat in the low block. We knew they were going to do that. They scored from a transitional counter-attack, and it was Elanga. Of course it was Elanga. We knew they were going to do that. But we didn't have enough quality to break it down. United, they're 24 shots, 68% possession, 10 corners. We created so much more than them because I didn't even want to try. But that's their 13th clean sheet of the season. That means that they're third in the league. It's absolutely working for Forest. And Amorim is just going to be frustrated because, I tell you what, I don't know if this is going to be an unpopular opinion or not. I genuinely thought in that first half, that was one of the better overall performances from United, frustrating as it was that we were 1-0 down. We were actually passing the ball around with a little bit of pace. We're actually zipping it to each other. We created a couple of, I would say, decent chances. Bruno very early on. And then we had a couple of half chances. But we didn't get the goal in the second. I'll tell you one thing that kind of switched up a little bit. Towards the end of the first half, Nuno made a couple of defensive subs. They just kind of switched into a back five. From that point on, and look, it was effectively a tale of these two players in that game. You know what really annoyed me about that Elanga goal? It just felt like United had the wrong players. But I don't know whether this is like Captain Hindsight or all that, but it felt like we had the wrong players back defending that. Was it De Ligt and Mazraoui as the two deepest? I can't remember who the other one was. Dorgu, of course, was just caught the wrong side when the ball went over the top. But it just feels like, it's just stupid, man. No one's catching Elanga. What was it, 9 seconds for 85 metres with the ball at his feet? He was like a coiled spring in that game. Unreal. And it was the tale of those two in that game, if I'm being totally honest, because Garnacho had the ball more than any other attacker that we had. But just the decisions from Garnacho were just wrong, or they were just a half a yard short. It was frustrating. And against a low block, I would say that Garnacho is one of the last players that you really want. You want players who are going to be able to creatively cut through somehow, whereas Garnacho is quite repetitive and quite predictable in his patterns and his turns. And that's what it was. It was just, you know what, right? I felt there was, look, Jesus, compared to where we are, right? I felt like there was progress in that first half in terms of, I felt, watching as a United fan, I speak for myself, it felt like if United just played like that for the full 90, we just kept knocking, eventually the door would open. I mean, it never did. But in that second half, we offered less because the deeper threat, Forest just sat in a Mourinho-style back five. They didn't care about having the ball. They do what you want. We're just going to sit. We're going to sit. Oh, hit on the counter. We're going to sit. And it's working for them. They're third. So you can't really begrudge something that's not working. It's as frustrating as it is to play against. Bruno was playing in a more attacking position in the first half, and he was having the chances. But then, look, it was one of Casemiro Ugarte who was back as well, covering Mazraoui, I think. If you're playing with a midfield that slow, you're always going to have problems. It is true. And look, when it comes to me talking about the frustrations of Amorim that he'll have after that game, he said going into the game, United were confident. Like, you wouldn't think that Forest were the team, by the way, that just played 120 minutes in the FA Cup at the weekend, right? They looked like United towards the end. I thought that Maguire chance was going in. That was my prediction, actually, at 1-0. I mean, United deserve something from that game, man. There's going to be people saying, Forest deserved everything. But as I said one more time, that's worked for Forest all season. Hit hard on the counter. United got undone. And that's what I'm annoyed about, really, conceding that goal. You knew you knew exactly what Forest were going to try and do on any corner, on any particular position where they could counter-attack. They're going to get the ball to Elanga and they're going to burst into space. So why would you leave Mazraoui back there as the man to cover that space? Surely you have Dorgu as the deepest man, or you have Dalot as the deepest man, to at least give you the opportunity to match him. I mean, you wouldn't be able to match him. But having those two in midfield, it's not going to work in the long term. Casemiro needs to leave in the summer. I understood the subs from Amorim in that game. Taking Casemiro off, I thought he was probably going to get a red. What subs didn't I? I think I would have liked to have Collier on. Mount nearly scored. It's just, as I said, I'm going back to it again. It was just, you can be annoyed about how a lot of United games this season, but the main thing I'm taking from that game is just frustration. Just frustration that we don't have somebody who is just consistently putting the ball in the back of the net. And we do one, his name's Bruno, and that's why he was playing in the number 10. But because of that, we didn't have quite enough control from deeper. So then Bruno got dropped deeper because Ugarte wasn't controlling the game because Ugarte and Casemiro as a partnership is never going to work. We need a goal scorer this summer. And I'm not just talking about a striker, by the way. I think I'm talking about a striker and the number 10. As I said, the tale of the two flying wingers. Elanga, very purposeful. Look, Garnacho was probably our biggest threat in that game because he had so much of the ball. I'm just so frustrated, man. I was just so frustrated for Amorim. I think this is going to be a repeating pattern between now and the end of the season. I don't think any true progress is going to come until we've just got somebody who just puts it in the back of the net. Just scores. Scores once every two games. And you got another attacker who scores one every 3 games. Right now, we're just kind of saying, hey, lads, just get the ball to Bruno and let's just hope that he scores, right? And Højlund coming on the second half. Yeah, okay, we have more of a central focus down the middle. But it still didn't have enough presence in front of goal. And ultimately, we just weren't clinical enough there today. Forest sat deep. You can be pissed off about it if you want. But given that when Nuno came into Forest and they were, just 5 points up above the relegation zone to where they are now, it's working, man. It's absolutely working for them. Do I think that's sustainable past this season in building success? No, I think it's probably working for this season. They're going to have to try but who cares about them? Ultimately, he's going to be annoyed. Ultimately, I'm frustrated. And ultimately, from now until the end of the season. Now, look, in the Europa League, it's cup games. Things can happen in cup games. It's 2 legs. It's fine. But in the league, we're going to go from City on the weekend. We're going to find the same problems again. We're probably going to create chances against City. But who's going to bury them? City won't play with a low block. We're going to have more chances in behind. But who's going to bury them? You just can't have any confidence in this Manchester United team. And even though we scored 7 in our 2 games before the international break, the same ugly problem reared its head again. United in front of goal are limp. Sometimes it may be good. Most of the times, maybe shit. And that's what it was tonight. It was frustrating for Amorim. It was frustrating for United. And I actually think a lot of the good football will just kind of get forgotten about because we didn't score. And ultimately, football's about winning games.